This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to the Pet Health Coach with Jody L. Teisch, formerly called the Hound Healer. I'm Jody. I'm going to take a moment for this first The Pet Health Coach episode to answer a question some of you may not know the answer to. What is a pet health coach? Human health coaches have gained a lot of popularity in the recent few years, and they help people achieve their health goals with support. A pet health coach is similar. I'm your trusted advisor, your knowledge transfer person, sharing what I've learned over the years, and I bring resources in, whether it's an expert like a holistic vet to work in an area needing deeper knowledge, or a specialized trainer. Think of me as the quarterback running the ball of your pet's health plan down the field with you, making it all understandable, meeting you where you are, because not every pet parent is ready to do everything right away, and pulling all the pieces together and being your champion, the pet goals to achieve the health goals you have for your pet. So I hope this clarifies the container that this podcast resides in. And I'm thanking my guest today for the latitude to do this so my audience understands the transition. Like on the Hound Healer, the Pet Health Coach will focus on natural ways of healing and sharing information with interviews with experts in the nutrition and natural healing space. Today, we have Genie Joseph on the show. Genie is a PhD and the executive director of the Human Animal Connection, a 501c3 organization dedicated to changing the way humanity relates to our animals. Genie and her team bring therapy animals and people together, and they offer, and this is really a beautiful thing, free therapy dog visits to veterans, active duty people, healthcare providers, and anyone experiencing stress in the field of service to others. They offer a whole lot more, and we're going to get into it right after this short message from our sponsor. So grab that healthy beverage, get comfortable, and we'll be right back.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There is no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms. And our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. You're tuned in to the Pet Health Coach with Jody L. Teisch. We're here today with Genie Joseph, the executive director of the Human Animal Connection. Welcome, Genie.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure, and thank you for allowing me that long introduction to explain to my listeners this transition from the Hound Healer to the Pet Health Coach. Before we get started, I want my listeners to understand about the Human Animal Connection. What is it in scope? How did you come to this work?
Yeah, well, I began a program called Act Resilient, which uses laughter and comedy, improvisation, expressive arts. And I was working with the military in Hawaii, and we were very effective. We were getting over 80% reduction in the symptoms of PTSD. And so it was a very effective program. In fact, we even were given several national awards and President Obama's Volunteer Service Award, an award from the American Psychiatric Association, all kinds of good stuff. So we were doing great. But a couple of years into the program, I began bringing therapy animals into working with soldiers and actually all branches of the military. We work with all branches. And what I saw was, oh my God, what a dog can do in 10 minutes. Why am I working so hard?
Yeah, one of your success stories, his wife, he has he had PTSD. His wife said that you did more to help him in a few sessions than 10 years of therapy.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it was amazingly effective, although it was so far outside the box, it was a little bit hard for some people. Anyone in the class understood it, but the generals and things were a little bit like, what? What's she doing?
New
She's bringing
territory.
horses. She wants to bring a horse into the hospital. What?
I want to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
But first, I think that it's really interesting how your past work, whether it was as a dog trainer or in the entertainment field, informed what you created. Tell listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was in the movie business, so I was your typical type A person living in New York City.
That was me.
Yeah, exactly. I had a cat who actually adopted me. She was out, and it was the middle of winter, and you know what New York winters are like. And there was this teeny little thing, and at this point I had a ground floor apartment, and I heard this sound like somebody breaking in, and I had people break in. That was like my third break in, so I'm screaming, at this little thing, and I hear. So I said, all right, well, it was interesting because, you're a spiritual person, you'll understand this. I had been getting guidance that I was going to get a cat, and there was no way that I could have a cat with my movie business person. I just was too busy, even for a cat. I was too busy for a caterpillar. So I said to myself, okay, I am just going to open the door and give this cat some milk, and that'll be it. I'm not going to, that's it. I just don't want this thing to starve. This tiny little thing, not a full grown cat. And the cat walked right past the milk and into my door. My door was open, and just made himself at home. And he was the most amazing. Everybody says this, all cats are amazing, but you know how it is. It's the most amazing cat.
My cat's the most amazing. That's the
way. Yeah. We all have the most amazing cat. Everyone has the most amazing cat. So one of the things I realized that this cat was very intuitive. So I would have a couple of movie scripts sitting on the floor, and I was trying to decide which project to focus on and put them down on the floor. And Wolfie, his name was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, he would go and pick the one. He would sit on the one that he thought was interesting. And he was always right. I mean, it was like, yeah, that one is better.
That is hilarious.
So I began to really trust him. He had better instincts about people, and especially about men, than I did. He just knew who was a good person, and that really got me started with thinking about animal wisdom. What is it that they know and sense that's beyond kind of our human capacity to make decisions? And obviously I'm not going to let an animal make all of my important life decisions, but I'm certainly going to check in and see, what is this animal, what's he sensing or feeling or noticing? And that if you've shared your life with a dog, that they'll walk down the street and they'll pick who they're interested in. Some people just walk on by, they don't want to engage. Other people, it's like they have to stop, they have to sniff, they have to touch, they have to kiss, and it's like, oh my God, and then when that happens, I go, yeah, this is person of interest. I take a moment to just recognize that this was an important choice, that my little Sophia, my little doggie now, I say little because she's about 25 pounds. You can't see the picture I'm holding up if you're on audio. But anyway, she was a rescue from the shelter. I now live in Tucson, and I was volunteering at the shelter there, and I had just moved here. So I didn't even have an apartment. And my friends that were hosting me, they had only one rule: no animals. You can live here, but no animals. And so I was volunteering at the shelter, and I was actually doing a program for at-risk kids where we teach them how to do dog training as a way of helping them understand their own emotions and building confidence and so on. And so this little Sophia, she was at that time about 15 pounds, and she was terrified. She had this huge cone on, and the shelter worker was dragging her, and she took one look at me. I was just standing there on the side, and she leapt into my chest. I mean, like, just trusting that I would catch her, which I did. And it was like, she decided, you're my person. I don't care if you don't have an apartment. I don't care if you just moved to Tucson. I don't care if you don't know anyone except the one friend you're staying with. You're my person.
I'm coming with you.
I'm coming with you, right? And she had been a feral dog. She had been in several shelters. She had been tossed around through several shelters. And to put it bluntly, I did finally get an apartment because I had to have her. Right? So I I found a foster who could take her until I got settled. But I got this apartment, and when I first got her, she was feral. I mean, the maintenance men were afraid of her. If we were walking down the street, they would go on the other side of the sidewalk. They would make a beeline around to avoid us because she was so terrifying. And I'm talking 20 pounds of pure terror, a street dog, right? So anyways, short version is we've done a lot of training and a lot of healing, a lot of energy work, and she has passed her therapy dog test, and she's now my sweet little therapy dog, and she just melts hearts when people meet her. And as we'll probably talk about the program we do in the high school
We
in
are
just a
going
moment.
to. Yes, we're going to talk about that too. That's an incredible story. And what a journey. I didn't even realize, Jeannie, that you were a fellow Type A New Yorker. So
yeah.
I totally feel you. I get it. But things have changed. And actually, everyone will get a chance to see Sophia because we have a beautiful photo of her as well as of Jeannie on the Pet Health Expert page of the Pet Life Radio site. So you'll be able in the show notes to see photos as well. Yeah, so they can meet her. So when I was looking on your site and researching for my interview with you, you mentioned phrases like connecting to a sense of goodness or a massage for the soul. You absolutely have created your own kind of process in bringing therapy animals and people together. And I'd love for you to explain a little bit about what that is.
Well, thank you for asking. So our work, the human-animal connection, is based on 33 principles, and these are also methods, so they're very practical. So there are exercises that people can do if they want to learn this work, and that's all in my book now, so people can get that book. It's available on Amazon. And the first principle is what we call good medicine. What we mean by that is there is a force in the universe of goodness, just as there is a force in the universe of not goodness. So I'm not in any kind of denial that there isn't ungoodness out there, but what I recognize is that it's so important for us to be able to choose where our focus is. Is our focus on what's good? Is our focus on what's not good? Because whatever we're focusing on, we're going to obviously get more of in our experience. And this is one of the things we teach the high school students, is to recognize that where they put their focus, that's what's going to have their energy. So I give the metaphor, if you've had a dog, or maybe you say this to your cat, you go, who's a good doggy? We say this, all the time. A lot of us do, dog owners. And what it does is it's good for the dog, but it's also good for us. So when we say good doggy, we get the experience of the love we feel for the animal, and the animal returns that with a gaze or a tail wag or a cuddle. And we get this little cycle of goodness going back and forth between us and them. So the more we say it, the better it gets, because they love being acknowledged for their goodness, and they love to acknowledge us for our goodness too. And that's one of the reasons why therapy dogs are so powerful, is that they see our essence, they see our goodness, not our, how much money we have, or what kind of car we drive, or what our career is, or what our skin color is, or what's wrong with us. They see our goodness. And that exchange of good energy is a force. It's not just like an abstract idea. I mean, it's real. It's real. And we now know from the studies that interacting with a therapy animal or an animal you love can help you release the feel-good chemicals, the brain chemistry of oxytocin, serotonin, and all that. So we're not just making this up. Now the science is recognizing, something real is happening here. It is lowering blood pressure. It's increasing your immune function, just being in this good energy. And so that is what I call the goodness tank. So there are certain things in life that fill up our goodness tank, like being with our animals or doing anything that we love or following our passion. And there are certain things that cause our goodness tank to leak, goodness tank in quotes, metaphorically speaking. But in life, there are interactions with people that either raise us or leave us at the same level, or take us down in some ways, whether through the judgment or whatever it is that gets us stuck, And so what I realize is we have to protect our goodness tank. We have to fill it and continue to refill it, because it's going up and down all the time, every day. And what we encourage our students to do is really make what is it that helps you to feel good? And it can be something small. Like one of my go-tos is raspberries. I lived in Hawaii for 25 years, and raspberries were really expensive. And my ex didn't want us to spend money on raspberries because he thought that was too frivolous. I thought they were a necessity. It shows you why we're not together. There's the raspberries. So we're still best friends. But whenever I think about raspberries, I love the texture. I love the taste. I love the color. I love the way it feels in your mouth. It's just everything about raspberries makes me feel good. So these are things that I have like in my goodness escrow account that I can just call up and help to fill my goodness tank. So it could be something as simple as raspberries or your pets or people you love or things you love. And what we want people to do is connect to the actual sensation of goodness. So not just the idea of goodness, not just the thinking about goodness, not the good, bad, like the moral judgment of goodness, but the actual sensation of goodness. And when we're with animals, that's what we feel. When we're with animals we love, we feel this goodness. That's why it was so therapeutic with the soldiers with PTSD. That's why it's so therapeutic for doctors who are stressed. That's why it's so therapeutic for high school students and for everybody that needs just a little lift of goodness. So we really believe that it's a sense like sight, touch, taste. There's a sense of goodness. And the more we orient towards that, and that's something we learned from the dogs will orient towards what feels good, what's nice. And we can learn from that.
What a beautiful way to describe that. Very visual, the goodness tank. So true. And yes, it helps strengthen our immune system. And when they feel happy, because we're doing more of what they love too, whether it's cuddling with them, loving them, it does the same for them. It strengthens their immune system.
That's right.
It is a beautiful exchange.
Yeah, it's like a circle of goodness. We acknowledge it in them, and what I then teach our students is, you're acknowledging it in the dog. It's easy to say Sophia's a good doggy, but what about you? So it's like, okay, so I'm a good doggy. Well, maybe I'm not a doggy, but I'm good. I can say, I say good Sophia, good doggy, and then I say good Genie, good Genie. I don't have to say it out loud. It's just a feeling. It's something that we can do. It's like a little self-soothing technique that has no side effects and it's free.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say this because there's a vet in Australia, and one of the things that he teaches pet parents to help with anxiety in animals is a touch therapy. And he actually asks the pet parents, because, emotional transference all day long, they're so intuitive, our animals, and we are constantly sending energy to them and vice versa, is he says, imagine yourself as your favorite breed of dog, let's say, and really imagine yourself, and now give yourself a name. So make it real. And then imagine yourself doing good doggy to that animal and give yourself a nice big hug like you would if that was a dog next to you that you love.
Love it.
Yes. So it's very much in keeping what you're talking about with what you're talking about. Yeah. So I want to set the stage a little bit for what we're going to talk about next. You did a little bit before when you talked about being a part of, the entertainment industry, certainly. But my listeners don't know that you are an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker. So tell us a little bit about that. And then I want to do a deeper dive into what you termed the Act Resilient method. But let's start with your filmmaking.
Yeah, so I was in the movie business for 25 years. I had my own company. I did mostly low-budget movies and in New York, then in Hawaii when I was living in Hawaii. And I didn't think that there was anything better in life than being in the movie business until I discovered animals. And then it was like, and I was, even in Arizona, I was president of Independent Film Arizona here for 3 years. And it was just like overnight, I never thought I would leave the movie business. I just like, how could people not be in the movie business? It was just like, it was the whole world to me. And then all of a sudden I discovered something that was more meaningful. And I literally let go of that movie life. I mean, I still do some consulting. People will consult with me for scripts. They'll hire me as a script doctor, re-edit or something. So I do still do some. I'm still a judge.
Toe in. Yeah.
Yeah, toe in. I'm still a judge at the Emmy Awards, and occasionally I'm a judge in one of the top screenwriting competitions and worldwide. Yeah. So
Nice.
I have a little hand in, but mostly I think that, let me tell you how it'll all come together. Here's how it's going to come together is that I do have an idea for a TV show about a kind of a Dr. Dolittle who talks to animals. So to really encourage people to normalize that talking to animals is a good and natural thing and a smart thing, because often they have wisdom that they can offer. And I just want to help people understand that that's not something that just a few people can do, but it's something that anybody can do. And most children do it naturally. And, many children hear also. They hear from animals, and that's something that as adults we can have in our life. So that notion of storytelling, and, here I've told you a couple of stories here, it's just entertainment is the way we're going to change the world, I think. So I think pet entertainment, and I'd love to talk with Mark a little more afterwards, find out what, his thoughts of that. But it's just, it's the one thing that reaches across the aisles. Like, we can't agree on this, that, and the other, but we can agree that we love animals. Most of us. I mean, not everyone. Obviously, not everyone loves animals, but I think a lot of people do. And I think that that's a way to really change the culture. And our mission is to change the way people relate to animals. And what we mean by that, there's so many levels of that, but on the most basic level, it's the recognition that animals have an inner life. They have emotions, they have thoughts, they have opinions. Now, if we were doing this radio show 10 years ago, I would be considered a freak. 10 years ago, that would be like, who's this weirdo you have on your show, Judy? What are you doing now? You've gone into the woo zone. But now that we have scientists who are out there giving us the evidence for this, dogs that can go into MRIs awake, and they can see that their brains are lighting up just almost the same as a human brain would in terms of the emotions. And we have much more evidence than ever before about animals having an inner life. And in the human-animal connection, one of the things we say is that animals have opinions. They like what they like. They don't like what they don't like. And this is such an important thing to recognize, because it begins to change the notion of pet ownership and move it towards pet partnership. And that's what we're all about.
Absolutely. I think one of our greatest short-sighted shortcomings is those of us who look at animals as these creatures that we sort of reign over. I love the idea of partnership. And, there are so many stories and movies made from these stories about animals that intuitively know things that are going to happen before they happen, or, they stay by the side of their loved pet parent, partner when they're ill, or find help, or, when they've passed. There's just so many of these stories of animals who just know things that we maybe didn't think that they could know.
Absolutely.
And the science now is catching up for sure. And I think more and more pet parents are looking at themselves now as, if not partners yet, as if these animals are our babies and our charge and are in our care, and we care about them and make sure that they have a wonderful life as much as if they were human children.
Exactly. Most people with animals love them as if they were family members, but they don't always understand them.
Yes.
And this is where things go haywire, which is probably when you get these emergency calls, right? Yes. I know I get those calls, my dog's doing this. Why do we know?
Yes.
So, our mission is really to help people develop their own ability to understand, because one of the things that happens in the world is that there are a lot of experts with opinions, and you get person A saying this and person B saying the exact opposite, and they're both good people and they both mean well. And so in the end, we really need to be able to have our intuitive channel open, so we can say, well, for my dog, is that right? Or for my dog, is that not right? And to be able to navigate the unknown things that unfortunately do happen, health issues and so on and so forth, behavioral issues. And so our method is really to help people to find what I call their North Star, which is their sense of what's right for them. It doesn't mean what's right or wrong in terms of a moral sense, but it's what's true. What is true for you and your animal. So sometimes, like with a horse not feeling well and we don't know what's the best herb to give them, we'll make a tea of both of them and offer both and see what the horse chooses. Yes. And the horse will invariably choose the one that the horse needs. And there's no way I could guess that, and maybe an expert will say this or say that, but I need to ask the horse.
Absolutely. Bioindividuality. It's very real. So I just want to take an aside for a moment, because before we get into this amazing program that you created, but do you teach pet parents how to communicate, listen, and understand what their animals may be thinking and feeling?
Absolutely.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you do that? I know it's all about the intuitive factor, but I'm sure that you have some, specific steps or exercises that you use with pet parents, not to go so deep right now, but just to give listeners a sense in case they're interested in learning this.
Sure. Well, of course, there's my book, and then there's going to be a class.
So it's in that book.
Yeah. And then there'll be a class, an online class that accompanies that, so people can practice what they've read in the book. So that's coming. Like, I was just working with this woman. She's a research scientist, very smart, left brain. She's actually blind, but absolutely brilliant. Has a cat, doesn't believe in any of this, but she was curious. And she said, she has an adopted cat, and she had some questions. And so we did some work, and the cat was very willing to communicate. And I told her this stuff, and it was really, really helped her understand some of the behavioral problems that were happening in the house that were bothering her. And because we had this conversation, the behaviors changed, and that convinced her. And so she told her friends, and her friends were like, "Are you becoming a woo-woo?" It was like so shocking. What do you mean you're talking to your cat? What do you mean you're just talking? Or what do you mean when you're talking? But what was interesting, the cat's name was Jupiter, and the cat had lots to say, and lots to say about Jupiter's past lives, which she's not a person who believes in past lives, or not yet, but anyway, Jupiter was explaining about his life in Egypt. He had a life in Egypt. And, it's very interesting because, there's no way I could make this stuff up, like why would I come up with this? Yeah. So it's been very, very exciting to recognize that, there isn't this hard line between our consciousness and their consciousness. It's a soft line. Now, it may be, if you're just starting, it can seem like it's as far as Mars to be able to talk and listen to animals. But if you have a true desire to do it, you can learn. Somebody who doesn't believe in it, maybe they're going to have a tough time, but somebody who's willing, and when they see, sometimes when an animal communicates something to them, it's just jaw-dropping, it's just like, okay, I think I better pay attention.
Wow. And the fact that the behavior changes.
Yeah. Like I had this
for someone who doesn't believe, that is
amazing.
Evidence. Real,
it's evidence.
Tangible evidence. That's
exactly.
incredible.
I had this one client, and she asked me to come over because she had rescued greyhounds, and one of them had passed, and the other one was doing very poorly. And so she got another one, but her heart, she hadn't done her healing yet, and her heart was still broken about the one who had passed. And the new one began pottying in the house, and she's a absolutely fastidiously clean person. You could eat off her floors, one of those. And this greyhound was, doing the whole business on her rugs after being walked. So she'd take him out for a walk in the morning on her way to work, and then inside the house, boom. And, she was thinking she had to rehome this dog because she just couldn't handle it anymore, and it was making her late and causing stress. And so we had a communication session, and I asked the greyhound what was going on, and the greyhound explained that there was no room for her in the house because the owner her heart was, she felt like she needed to be loyal to the dog that had passed. And she realized that she wasn't really opening her heart to the new dog. And once we had that conversation, and she cried a little, but she felt that it was true, and I didn't know any of this. I didn't know what that story was. But as soon as she recognized that and chose to open her heart to the new dog, everything changed. So we went 18 months, no accident in the house. And it was happening like almost every day.
Wow. We're going to talk.
Yeah.
Let's move forward because it's a half-hour show, and I could talk all day with you, Genie. So this amazing program that you talked a little bit about at the top of the show, the Act Resilient method that you teach veterans. Talk a little bit about this. Tell my listeners, what's involved in the program, and just a couple of the statistics of success that these poor people who are tortured when they walk in have in this program.
Yeah. So I did write a book about this. It's called The Act Resilient Method. It's on Amazon. So people want to see
Perfect.
that work, the earlier incarnation of what we're doing now, they can read that. Our current program is called Canines Teach Compassion. And that uses the wisdom of Act Resilient plus the therapy animals. So we're bringing both of those things together into the classroom to work with kids who are in counseling. Like last year, we worked with kids who had lost a parent to COVID, so we're working with kids who are having a lot, lots of emotional issues. And, high school it wasn't easy when we went to high school. It's like 100 times harder now with school shootings and all
Oh, God,
just
yes.
very stressful to be in high school these days. And, in fact, speaking of school shootings, all of these school shootings were done by someone who was completely isolated, socially isolated. And one of the things that we find is that kids who have good social skills do well in high school, and the kids who are struggling with social skills are going to struggle academically also. So we partner with the dogs. I don't want to say use because that's kind of the wrong method, but we partner with the animals to help the kids learn about their own nervous system, about their emotions, about their energy, and about their stress levels, and also about their goodness. So without even having to talk, we don't use words so much. We bring them into their sense of goodness about themselves. And the first principle in Canines Teach Compassion, our program, is that you can't feel compassion towards someone else until you feel it for yourself. And so that is where we bring in that concept of goodness, good doggy, good person, good doggy, good genie. You can say my name, but you can say your own. It's really wonderful. So we teach the kids, one of the first things we teach them is that dogs have emotions and energy just like us. They have stress just like us. We teach them a 10 scale. 10 is like the worst stress of your life. And in dog terms, it would be dangerous. Someone's going to get bit. A 10, you never want to be at a 10, but it does happen. Believe me, I've had thousands of hours in the shelters. It happens. Okay. So
The red zone.
yeah, the red zone. It's really an awful place. So, and one would be just very, very peaceful. The dog is in a sleepy state. If you make a noise, they might open an eye, but they're going to go right back to sleep. And in between, so we teach them how to recognize that in dogs. And within one class, they've learned to within 1 point recognize dog's energy level. So I'll say, "What's Sophia right now?" And they'll say, "She's a 3." Great. How do you see that in her body language? So they identify it through the way the dog is behaving, what ones we've taught them. And then we say, okay, what's Bailey? Well, Bailey's a 6 right now. Great. Okay. So where are you right now? And then recognizing that it's the same for them. They could be at a 1 or a 2 or a 6. And this is not a personality trait. This is something that's changing like the weather all day long. You're going up and down the scale of energy and the scale of stress. And why that's important is that once we teach them that, when they walk in the room, we ask them, what's your stress level today, entering the room that we're working in. And they're often coming in at 7s and 8s, high stress levels these teens are feeling just chronically. And then we're interacting with the dogs. We're teaching them these methods of learning how to manage their own emotions. And we ask them what they're feeling. We see between 50 and 60% drop in stress levels across the group every day.
Wow.
So that's pretty exciting for 1 hour of engagement. And again, it's not requiring anyone to share anything personal, what's going on in their life if they don't want to, although they end up talking. We had one boy and he was a little younger. I don't know if he had skipped a grade, but he was didn't look like he should be in high school, really young looking and just maybe about 80 pounds. And he was so shy, he didn't talk at all. Nobody had ever heard him talk. I mean, I knew he could talk, but he was just too shy. And we had this 130-pound bull mastiff dog, which was literally almost twice his weight, right? And therapy dogs, as you know, are not allowed to lick people. That's not part of the therapy dog rules. But this dog, said hello to everyone, greeted everyone. But he picked this one boy and he just started to lick him and lick him and lick him and lick him. And he started giggling and the whole class started laughing. It was such an amazing thing for this boy to see. This dog chose me out of all the kids in the room. He said hi to everyone. He liked everyone, but this dog picked him. This is my boy. And after that, he started talking. He couldn't shut him up. He just was, what are we doing next? What's happening today? What about this? What's this for? How are we going to do this? It was so wild.
Oh,
It was like the light switch went on, it's really, that's what a great therapy dog can do.
So powerful. And this generation that's in high school and college now, they are in an epidemic, a mental health epidemic.
Absolutely.
They have the highest depression, anxiety, and suicide rates of any generation. They're one of our largest generations. They're our next leaders. So programs like this are especially powerful. to help these kids who had tremendous fallout from COVID, from the Great Recession. So bless you. That's amazing. We need to take a break. So we're going to hold that thought. But when we get back, I want you to tell people, because there are definitely listeners out there who have kids who are Gen Z kids who might need support like this in their school and might want to know how to reach out. And then I also want to talk about the precursor program and the kinds of things you did with these veterans that changed lives, saved marriages, saved families, because they were outside the box, certainly for the time, thinking that really got results. Plus, we have a couple of stories that Genie is going to tell you about dogs that just blossomed like that boy in the class. So, so go refresh that healthy beverage, get comfortable, and we'll be right back.
Molly, here's your dinner. Zeus, that's not your food.
Don't let that happen to your precious cat. Elevate your cat's eating experience with the Cat Tree Tray. The Cat Tree Tray keeps your cat's food off the floor and conveniently located on the cat tree. It's the perfect way to eat. It's a beautiful wrought iron tray that easily attaches to your cat tree and keeps dogs and other critters out of your cat's dish. A must for multi-pet households. There's a 6-inch tray for large bowls and a 4-inch tray for smaller bowls. Purchase your Cat Tree Tray today. Go right now to cattreetray.com. That's cattreetray.com. cattreetray.com. Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. If you just joined, you're listening to the Pet Health Coach with Jody Teish. We talked about how your Canines Teach Compassion program in high schools is having incredible results for Gen Z, this one of our largest generations who suffer from epidemic levels of anxiety, depression, suicide, and they're our next leaders. They need help. And you are in there helping them and working on expanding this program, which is a beautiful thing. What I want to also talk about is, and towards the end of the show, I'd love for you to tell people where they can find you. So if they're interested in maybe getting your program into their kids' school, this is something that maybe you can help them with. But the precursor to Canines Teach Compassion, called the Act Resilient Method, which focused on veterans, had incredible results and had like techniques that were outside the box thinking at that time that sort of brought your previous life into that present life. Tell us a little bit about that. A couple of the statistics too.
Yeah, so Act Resilient, we work with over 4,000 service members as well as veterans and their families, because it really is a family system when you're talking about PTSD. So whenever possible, we want to work with the entire family, including the dog, because if you've got stress with a veteran and then it goes downhill to the wife, to the kids, and then the dog gets kicked, you know what I mean? Yeah. And often, when we see behavioral problems, sometimes the dog is expressing what the humans can't. And so we have to look at the whole system. So that's, one of the things that I really discovered there. And as I mentioned, we were just having really extraordinary results with people. I had this one Navy SEAL hospitalized with PTSD, and on our 10 scale, he was an 11 all the time, and, his children were afraid of him at breakfast. It was just, you just didn't know what was going to happen. And so we taught him these methods, and we taught the kids too, so they could give him a signal when they wanted him to come down. They would put up, holding up 2 fingers. That's the 2, meaning he was at an 11, but they wanted him to come down to a 2. And he recognized that it was affecting his children and the dog, and that motivated him to change. Even though he wasn't necessarily motivated to change for himself, he thought he was fine. But when he saw what it was doing to the children and to the dog, he said, maybe I better change. And it was like that decision that changed it for him. He began to, and we taught him how to do it, but we showed him how to manage his nervous system so he could bring himself back down from an 11 to a 2 in the course of seconds, because these techniques, they have to be fast in order for them to work. And so a lot of what I understood about working with trauma, I was able to take into the shelter when I was volunteering. And animals can be traumatized the same way humans can. And the shelter is a very traumatic environment. And so everything that's in my book, I literally learned from working with the animals in the shelter. They taught me how to work with an animal that was disengaged and frightened, traumatized, shut down, and how to get them to trust life again and to trust people again and how to come out of their shell.
Wow. Wow. Also, I saw in a couple of the videos that I watched of this Act Resilient method that you would have them do exercises that were improv, taken from the improv world, and really get them out of their own head and into their bodies and movement and acting as if. And that seemed to have a lot of success too. So
yes. Very
because,
powerful.
we just don't know who's listening in terms of what their family situations might be like and how programs like this might be lifelines for them. Yeah. So, that's
the book. The Act Resilient Method is kind of written for the person who's experiencing trauma. So it's not like a academic book, and it has a lot of exercises and things that people can do in practice. So
perfect. Now, in your Canines Teach Compassion, you find shelter dogs and you train them and you give them a beautiful second chance at life to do good. I remember watching a video on your site about a dog in particular named Buff, and I'm going to ask you to share that story. It's a lovely story.
Yeah, so Buff, again, chose me. I was volunteering there and he was in a play yard and all the other dogs were playing except him. He was so traumatized. He was crouched in the corner, wouldn't move, was like, is this dog dead? I mean, he just was so frightened. And I was on the other side of the fence because I was observing. It was a training session. And I just began doing energy work with him. I just began communicating with him, letting him know that he was safe, that he was loved, that he was good. And finally, it was about 20 minutes maybe, he decided to make a beeline from all the way on the other end where he was hiding all the way to me so he could be right up against me on the fence so he could just touch, we had a chain link fence between us, but we could touch. And that was the beginning of me saying, oh boy, he chose me. I have to work with him now. So I really just dropped everything and began working with him. He was afraid to be touched. He was afraid to make eye contact, and eye contact isn't normal for all dogs. Some dogs, if they've lived in a home, they're very comfortable making eye contact. But for other dogs, it can be really, really scary and challenging and confrontational. And one of the things I discovered in the shelters was, like right now at our shelter, we have 537 dogs in a shelter built for 200. So it gives you some idea what's going on here. And they are doing everything they can to get them out. But I would say to people who adopted a dog, I'd say, why did you pick that one? There's 416 dogs here and you picked that one. And they'd say invariably, oh, it was the way he looked at me. I couldn't leave him there. And I realized, okay, this is the first thing after we teach them sit. We've got to teach them to be comfortable with eye contact, because a dog that can come up to you at the kennel and look you in the eye is going to be really hard to leave in that shelter. But the scared dogs, what they do is they cower in the corner, they shake, and people are afraid to scare them more. So they just keep walking, and these dogs never get seen. They never get asked out. And so we teach them to do this. So with Buff, I began working with him and would take him out for ice cream, and he was terrified going out. Just the world was such a scary place. But we got to the place of working with him where he became my demonstration dog in massage class, and he would just look at you and look at you and look at you, and he loved it, and he got adopted right away.
Yeah, well, I want you to tell people where they can find you, because on your site, they can see the video of Buff, and he's always smiling. It's beautiful. So tell people where they can find you.
So we are thehumananimalconnection.org. So don't forget thehumananimalconnection.org. And you can join our free newsletter. You can get the book that tells all of these methods and has a workbook in it so you can practice these methods for yourself. So it's available on Amazon. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to write us, we do consultations for people over Zoom if you're not here in Tucson.
Beautiful. Genie, thank you so much for the beautiful work you're doing and the lives that you've changed. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. As a pet health coach, my mission is to share holistic healing options for pets and their parents seeking a natural approach to wellness. So tune in next time for information, expert interviews, and tips to give the animals we love the longest and most vibrant life we can. I'm Jody L. Teich, and this is the Pet Health Coach.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.